Gary Williams here. Some friends of mine are making a difference in the community, and one of the ways they're doing that is helping to sponsor this podcast. Petroselli Homes Realty Group is a boutique brokerage service located in downtown Niles. They offer a personal and intentional touch to the home buying and selling market. They take the time to learn each client's story, much like this podcast, because to them, the first step in linking buyers to the home of their dreams starts with understanding and a great deal of trust. John and Jennifer Petroselli have had the honor of helping countless buyers and sellers make effective real estate decisions to plant their roots, raise their families, expand their wealth, or simply relax and retire. So if what I've described is what you might be looking for in a realtor, I suggest getting in touch with Petroselli Homes on Niles Boulevard in downtown Niles. Now, coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time. Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Hello, Fremont. You are listening to episode number 25 of the Fremont Podcast. I made a mistake last week. I was getting a little too ahead of myself, and I introduced last episode as episode 25. Actually, this is episode 25, and I will go back and fix the last episode to make sure that it says properly 24. Anyway, just a little admin work on my end. Today, I am really excited to be able to join a couple who have volunteered and given their time to be curators for the Mission San Jose mission. This year is the 225th anniversary of Mission San Jose, and all year this year there have been different events and activities scheduled to commemorate the anniversary. And so I get the opportunity to sit down with them this week, right before the Founders Weekend, which is coming up here on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of June. And we get to talk about what it means and what kind of activities are going on, and how Fremont can be involved in the commemoration activities. So this is going to be a landmark conversation, a landmark weekend. You're going to want to be involved. And this conversation will help you know how you can be a part of that. So sit tight and enjoy this conversation that I have with them in the Mission Garden outside. You'll hear all the noise around us, but it's just a beautiful place, a beautiful location for a great conversation. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Fremont Podcast. I am currently right now sitting in the courtyard of the Mission San Jose, and I am with Gary and Nancy Dorighi. Is that how you say it?
Close. Dorighi.
They are the mission curators for what is both the mission chapel as well as a museum, and so they are volunteers for the mission here. So, how would you explain what your role is? What do you guys do here?
Okay, well, Nancy and I are, as you say, curators for the mission. So we're kind of help out on all things mission. We are volunteers, and yet we're not, trained historians per se. We love history. We love reading. We have delved deeply into the Mission San Jose's history. But our take on history and our views are not necessarily representative of St. Joseph Parish or the Diocese of Oakland.
Okay. And how long have you guys been volunteer curators here at the mission?
Yes, I think Gary started probably about 12 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
And as a docent, giving tours for the kids. And I got roped in a few years into that, helping in other ways.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit. The reason the reason we actually even met or became introduced to each other was because this year is a very special year for the mission. It's the 225th anniversary of the mission, and there have already been activities kind of commemorating that already going on throughout the year, but coming up the weekend of June 10th, 11th, 12th, there are even more specific activities that are going to be centered around that commemoration. And so I just think it's awesome that we can have this discussion on this special anniversary. So that's the reason why I got connected with Gary and Nancy, and I'm so glad and grateful that they took their time to join me here today. But before we jump into that, I'd like to hear maybe a little bit of your background, what brought you to Fremont, and how you ended up here in Fremont, and then what brought you to the point where you got more involved in the mission here. Can you tell me a little of that story?
So Gary and I are both born and raised in the Greater Bay Area. Me on the East Bay, Gary up in San Francisco. And when we decided to hook up and settle down, we chose a place that was sort of midpoint between our two jobs, and that ended up being Fremont. And no regrets. We think Fremont is a great city. And fortunately for us, we chose the Mission San Jose area, and that's really beautiful, and I feel like one of the best parts of Fremont. And I don't know, Gary?
Yeah, so we settled in the Mission San Jose area, and we raised our two children here. Both our kids went to St. Joseph's School right next door here. And we basically fell in love with the Mission San Jose area, and part of that was because of the discovery. We didn't really realize it at the time we moved here, but the discovery that the Mission San Jose area has the 14th of the 21 California missions, and so, I mean, how special is that?
That's awesome. Yeah.
That the city of Fremont has one of the 21 California missions. So that attracted us to the area, and like I said, our kids went to school here, and we just started to
just get involved in the community.
Live and get involved very deeply into the community here.
That's awesome.
Mission San Jose.
Do you remember the first time that you saw the mission? I know that you're kind of looking back on that, and do you remember the first time you saw the mission, or maybe the first time it captured your attention and really stuck out to you? Is that a vivid memory for you at all?
Well, it turns out this mission wasn't here when we moved to Fremont.
Really?
There was a Gothic church.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
the wooden
that
Gothic church.
That had been built after the Adobe Church was destroyed in an earthquake
Oh, wow.
in 1868.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Gothic church sat here until the 1970s, when a group of community leaders and a whole bunch of people decided that it was time to reconstruct the original Adobe Church.
Wow.
And so it was dedicated in 1985. And so we had already been here several years. So
That's
that was
awesome.
very special.
That's
time.
awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Mission Church is a perfect replica of the 1809 church. And a lot of, we could spend a whole podcast or two on what went into reconstructing the church. But suffice it to say, it wasn't here when we first moved here. Now, of course, the Mission Museum, the Convento, the former Padres' living quarters, was, of course, here. And it's been here since 1809. It's the oldest building in Alameda County.
Wow.
And it has been the museum for quite some time.
Huh. So correct my vocabulary a little bit. So for me, as an outsider, resident of Fremont, when I say, have you been to the Mission, I actually think of that building right there, the big one, the big church building. But it seems to me that when you're talking about the Mission, you're talking about something different than what I'm talking about. So correct me, help me understand what I need to be referring to when I say the Mission.
Sure. And what we like to say is when someone says the Mission within Fremont, that they're referring to what we call the whole Mission campus.
Okay.
So the Mission campus for us and for docents and people who lead tours is the Convento or the Mission Museum. What we're sitting in now, which we call the patio garden, which has its own rich history, the Mission Church, and then north of the Mission Church is the historic cemetery.
Okay.
And so that's all considered part of Mission San Jose. And when visitors and kids come here, they access all 4 of those areas, and that's all part of either a guided tour or a self-guided tour.
Okay. Very cool. So since we're sitting here right now, I'm looking around. These are olive trees, right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell me a little bit, what is significant about this particular garden area that we're in? It's beautiful. We've got all different types. I guess there's a fountain, some statues. We've got the olive trees. Tell me what's significant about this garden area.
Well, Nancy's the lead gardener,
Oh,
so she's going to tell you
excellent.
all about it.
Well, okay, so there's a historical component, and that is that, the original mission kind of had a quadrangle with a garden in the center, but in those days it was more a place to do work out in the daylight and so on. Later on they planted flowers and things to help decorate, but the olive trees themselves were brought over by the Spanish. Gary,
Okay.
you correct me if I'm saying anything wrong.
No.
And so they had a huge orchard. In fact, there's still, 200 of them or so still growing today.
Wow.
Back from the late 1700s.
Wow.
And they olive oil.
So these came from Spain then?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
so, the Spanish are very much into olive oil, and so they
Yes.
brought those here, and along with a lot of other orchard-type plants. And the original lands of the mission there were orchards and fields of grain and vegetables and grazing, and it just extended miles in all directions.
Wow.
And the grapevines you see date back to the stock. I mean, those aren't 200-year-old grapevines, but the stock goes back to the original Spanish. In fact, the flowers and brushes that are in the garden are, except for that stupid pine tree, are all date back to
That pine tree is like out of place. It's
the
like,
original.
It's like, what,
Yeah,
50 years old maybe?
Yeah, it's what would have been here.
Okay.
Back
Yeah.
in the day.
Okay. So I see a couple gravestones over here as well, and I'm assuming that maybe some of these statues are also. Do they commemorate anything, or is there any? Who's buried over here in the garden?
Well, there's a lot of folks buried, both not many in the garden area,
Uh-huh.
but quite a few in the historic cemetery that's north of here.
Okay.
Names you'd recognize: Livermore, Amador, Alviso, Bernal.
Okay.
Berg.
Yeah, Berg and Higuera.
Okay.
So those are all just a fraction of the folks in the historic cemetery.
Okay. Now, going to some of the other buildings on the property, I know you said that the Padre quarters, is that what you called it?
The living quarters,
The
yeah.
living quarters, you said that was the oldest building in Alameda County?
Correct.
Built in 1809.
09.
1809. Wow, that's awesome. Are people, and is it being used as part of the museum, or is actually somebody still living there, or what is that being?
No, it's now completely dedicated to being the Mission Museum
Okay.
and gift shop.
Okay.
There's also a gift shop.
Oh, this is this building right over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So as we approach the anniversary, the 225th anniversary, what does that mean for Fremont? Like, why is that so significant to Fremont? What does it mean for us as we, gather to observe in different ways?
Yeah, we see it as hugely significant, and our job over the last 8 to 10 months has been to try and educate as much of the citizenship of Fremont just how special this is.
Huh.
What it means for Fremont, the mission was founded in 1797. The significance of the location is this is the site of the village of Orasom, an Ohlone village.
Uh-huh.
And of course it made perfect sense to the Franciscan Padres to locate a mission in close proximity to the native peoples. And so, the mission period went on from 1797 to 1836. At that point, the mission period ended, and you started the Rancho period, and the Rancho period ended, with the Rancho period started because of the Mexican Revolution, which was finished in 1821, and then this area all became ranchos to Mexican families fairly connected to the Mexican government.
Wow.
So
we like to say that the mission really is the seed of Fremont, because back then there was nothing else here, and people gradually came and started living in the area, and then Fremont grew around.
So you would say that because of the mission, it became an attraction for other people to come into this area, and probably part of the reason why there were so many different communities that were started in this area. So that would make perfect sense, the seed of the community.
Yeah, especially with statehood of 1850, California statehood, then, this area became kind of a magnet for all sorts of people settling in the area.
Yes, including during the gold rush. People were on their way out to the valley and beyond, and this was a place for them to come and stock up on provisions and so on. And so they actually had a store built onto the convento where they could buy their stuff before they headed out to the hills.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because since it was no longer a mission per se, the Franciscans no longer ran it, and the building was abandoned for a little while, and they kind of moved in and turned a portion of the convento into sleeping quarters for the folks heading to the gold territory. And then, as she said, the south end of the mission was a store built by H.C. Smith, and he achieved his fortune and fame outfitting the 49ers, basically heading to, because the Mission Pass was the perfect pathway from the bay to the interior valley and onto the Gold Rush area.
Okay. Wow. That's really, really cool. There's so much history here, and I think that sometimes we think of the way things are now, and I know the people that have lived here in Fremont for a long time obviously have seen the massive transition over the last couple decades into what it is now, but even, going back before Fremont was actually a city, and going all the way back, there's so much history that's here. I think it's really helpful. I know for me, it's very helpful for me to be able to hear the history that was here for the last couple hundred years, and to be able to understand that this history affects the way we understand our city and our city culture to be as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun things that happen too as we are showing off this gem of Fremont. As a docent, the most frequent question I get is, gee, why is Mission San Jose in the city of Fremont? and of course the cynical answer is the city of Fremont didn't exist until 1956, whereas the mission was founded in 1797.
Sure.
So the simple answer is, well, we were here first.
Yeah. That's great. So I know, and I want to ask you about some of the details that will be happening in this next week when we do the commemoration. But I know that in the past, and I've looked at some of the activities that you've had going on here at the mission. There's been, you guys do stuff during the Advent season, the Christmas season. You have different carol sings or different things like
Posadas.
That. Yeah, so what are some of the stuff that year round happens here that people may not be aware of, but they would be interested in being involved in? Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about the Christmas carols. There is a tradition at many missions done, which is called Las Posadas, and it's the 10 days before Christmas, and we do it here too, where we gather in the evening and process singing carols each night to a different local business, and then we sort of go through a script that remembers Mary and Joseph trying to find lodging. And so we knock on the door of the business and we go through this script, and sorry, we have no room. And ultimately, the business owner lets us in. It's just, the businesses that are just a block or two away, different one every night. And
that's cool.
And then we go in, and then there's entertainment arranged and refreshments and so on.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort by Mission San Jose, the Mission San Jose Chamber of Commerce, and what's
the Fremont Cultural Arts
Fremont
Council,
Cultural
who arranges
Arts
the
Council.
entertainment. Yeah.
And this tradition dates back 39 years. It's going to be 40 years this coming December.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. And now, you guys didn't do it the last couple of years because of COVID, or did they still do it?
Oh, we still did it.
Can you imagine
great.
a virtual Las Posadas?
Virtual
we did it
Las
online.
Posadas.
Yeah,
That's
we did
great.
it
Yeah,
online.
we were stubborn. It was a technical
Good for you.
nightmare, but we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did Las Posadas by Zoom.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, are there any other things throughout the year that you guys do that are more of an annual activity as opposed to a bigger commemoration like this?
We do commemorate Founders Day every year, every June 11th, but this year, of course, it's a much bigger deal. But that's done with a special service in the church, and maybe some special extra guided tours and things like that. Maybe a little patio party.
I know that I know that a lot of what happens here must rest on your guys' shoulders. I mean, even as volunteers, you guys have your hands in so much that's going on here. I'm just curious personally, what time of year, or what are the things that you look forward to throughout the year? Is there anything specifically that it's an exciting time for you, or is it just all, you just kind of like giving your life to it and it's just like every day, it's just who knows what to expect?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess being a docent is kind of, keeps me pretty occupied. We have literally thousands of kids coming here each year for their fourth grade tours.
That's right. Yeah, my son's going to be a fourth grader this year, and so I'm excited to bring him by and let him tour.
And their schools arrange for a tour, and there's a complement of about 12 docents total, and we try and divvy it up over the course of the month. And each month we have a schedule, and this year was pretty cool. We added to our program coming out of COVID. We pivoted completely and have done a very different program than in the past. What we do now with the kids is we have the docent do kind of an outdoor tour because of COVID and explain all the history outdoors, and then they're allowed to go into the museum on their own time, and they have where they can watch the video, and then after roughly an hour of that, and they also go in the church, of course, because it's so huge.
Yeah.
You don't worry too much about exposure in there. And then after they see the video and tour the Mission Museum, then if they hang around for the afternoon portion, they have their lunches here on the patio, and then we treat them to 2 Ohlone games that teach Ohlone values, and then take them on a nature walk up into the Sisters area, where they can see some of the native plants and contrast those to some of the plants also up there that were brought in by the Spanish.
Wow.
So it's a pretty, they get a pretty good education by scheduling a day with us here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Sisters location. What is that connected to the mission as well, or how is that related to the mission?
Yeah, that's the Dominican Sisters of Mission San Jose, their mother house, and they have a lot of land up there. It's beautiful, and they have graciously allowed us to bring the children up there and walk through their little dedicated native garden. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's
so
nice.
now as we get ready for Founders Day, or the 225th anniversary commemoration ceremony, what have you guys already done? Because I actually talked to you yesterday about a special speaker that was here to talk about the missions, and you said that's already happened, and so I missed out on that. But what are some of the things that you've done specifically for this year, and then what are some of the things that we have to look forward to in the next week or two?
Yeah, so we decided at the very beginning to make it the Jubilee year, 2022, a year-long celebration, not just a single celebration on Founders Day weekend. So we've spent a lot of time working with historical speakers, qualified folks, unlike us, very qualified people who have given presentations on various dimensions of the mission. And that started in January, and the one you missed was in May 14th. And the next, of course, now we have Founders Weekend coming up, so the next one's going to be the second weekend in July, where one of the descendants of the Vallejos is going to give a presentation. So we've had the historical speakers, we've had concerts in the mission, we've worked with other historical entities and historical groups and asked them to put on programs. One of the wonderful programs that have been put on is by the Washington Township Museum of Local History. They've conducted some hikes around the neighborhood that they have branded as Mission 225 hikes. Also,
the Math Science Nucleus is another group in Fremont that does field trips for children, but they're putting on a couple of special walking tours of the Ohlone Tule Pond area, which is up by the BART station.
Yeah.
And
that's like a block from my house.
Yeah,
okay.
So they've had one already, and they have another wonderful one coming up this Sunday, Sunday,
June 5th.
at Tule Ponds. And then we've also worked with SNA Studios
In Niles.
in Niles, and they found in their archives the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the
Really?
mission. It's like a 16-minute video. It's available either on their website or our website. You can just take a look at it and see how they think of that. That's 1947. That's 2 years after the end of World War II, and to watch the way they decided to commemorate the event.
Yeah, they put on a big play, and they had 5,000 people?
5,000
attending
people came
and
through
watching
over
this
the course
play.
of the weekend.
It's
You
really
said that was
cute.
1947? So that was even
1947.
before Fremont was a city then.
Right,
It was
yeah.
just a
Yeah.
bunch of communities around
Yeah,
here. Wow.
Yeah.
That
was
is
fun.
really cool.
So anyway, we've worked with all these groups to put together a little piece of 225, and kind of culminating in Founders Weekend, but at the same time, these events will continue on through the rest of the year.
Sure.
These smaller events for people to enjoy and learn history.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So I'm looking forward to the Founders Day events, and I think that'll be really exciting. I'm hoping to be able to get up here as much as I can on those days. But for anybody that's interested to know more about the mission, I mean, I've lived here for 8 years, and I come up here, take pictures, and wander around and poke my nose in the windows and see if I can see anything, which I don't know if I'm allowed to do or not. But if I wanted to take advantage of maybe one of the tours or the bookstore or the shop or whatever, what information do I need to know regarding that?
So we have tours on Founders Weekend, both Saturday and Sunday at 11 and at 1 o'clock. And those are guided tours.
Okay.
And you can reserve them online on the website, or if you're lucky and you come and they're not full, you can sign up on the spot. And that will be roughly a 1 hour docent-led tour.
Okay.
And
are those tours also available the rest of the year as well, or just for the Founders?
they are. They're offered once a month right now on the second weekend of the month.
Okay.
One on Saturday, one on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're led by our docents. And
Okay.
again, you can reserve them online or just show up.
Okay.
You'll get a great tour of
That's awesome.
the area.
Yeah. So I don't want to sound too ignorant here, but what exactly is a docent, and what does that mean for anybody that might be listening that's just as ignorant as I may be, perhaps?
Oh, the docent, I don't know. I guess it's a fancy word for a tour guide. That's what they do.
I like it. It's a great word.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds very official.
They have, kind of studied from, in the old days, they would have studied from a binder to be familiar with the history of Mission San Jose. and then they also shadow other more experienced docents to kind of learn what it is we cover, and then they eventually give tours on their own. So they're basically tour guides.
That's awesome.
And they all have a common part of their personality. They tend to love history and they tend to love kids, and
that's great.
Both are required to do this work here.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I am so glad that you guys took some time to share about what you're doing here, and I think it's great. I mean, I'm just enjoying, this is a beautiful day. The sun's shining through the olive trees here, and I just think it's a beautiful place just to come, even if it's just to come and sit for a little while. It's really, really great. But I appreciate your time and your information, all your knowledge on this. Is there anything else that you would like to pass along before we sign off here?
Well, sure, absolutely. All your listeners need to go to mission225.org.
Mission225.org, okay.
That's our website.
Okay.
And on there, a beautiful website that'll tell you all the activities that are happening throughout the year, and specifically what's coming up, the page having to do with the 2-day festival, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on June 11th and June 12th.
Awesome. That's great. Mission225.org. We'll also have that in the show notes, so if you need a link to click, you can go to that as well. And then, and don't miss out on the festival, 2 days. So make some plans to come out here, look at the schedule, and see what you can make. And
great entertainment, great food, stuff for the kids to do, and it's going to be a wonderful weekend.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Thank both of you for your time and your information. This has been really great.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
Thanks for looking us up.
You've been listening to the Fremont Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you're so inclined, leave a kind review so that others can find the podcast. To stay connected with us, you can find links to our social media and other content at thefremontpodcast.com. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by Ricky B. Music provided through Soundstripe.com. I'm Gary Williams. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
Muggins Media.